Hey, my name is Evan. I'm 27. I spent 8 years managing estates for families who had more money than they knew what to do with. Then I took a job at a lake house in the middle of nowhere, and on my 3rd week, I found a clause in her prenup that said she couldn't touch me. Last night, she handed me a folder with her signature at the bottom and 2 words written in the margin. Accept him! She looked at me with those gray eyes and whispered, I'm tired of living by rules I didn't write. So, if you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments, because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. I'm Diary of a Single Man, and this is my story. I drove up that gravel road for the first time on a Tuesday morning in late September. The kind of morning where the fog sits low on the water and everything feels like it's holding its breath. The Whitcomb estate sat at the end of a 2-mile private drive, tucked behind old-growth pines that blocked out most of the sky. I'd seen pictures during the interview process, but pictures don't prepare you for the silence. The way sound just stops. No traffic, no neighbors. Just the crunch of tires on stone and the distant call of birds I couldn't name. I parked my truck near the service entrance, like I'd been instructed. Checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Clean shave, hair combed back. The kind of face that doesn't stand out in a crowd, which is probably why I got hired. Estate managers aren't supposed to be memorable. We're supposed to be invisible. The main house was something out of a magazine. 3 stories of stone and glass, with a wraparound porch that faced the lake. Money like this doesn't whisper. It doesn't need to. A woman met me at the side door before I could knock. Mid-50s gray hair, pulled back tight, wearing the kind of practical shoes that say she's been doing this job longer than I've been alive. You're Evan? It wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am. Elena, I run the house. She looked me up and down like she was deciding whether to let me in or send me back down that gravel road. The Whitcombs are private people. You'll learn their rhythms. Until then, follow my lead and don't ask questions you don't need answers to. I nodded. Understood. She led me through the service corridor, past a kitchen bigger than my entire apartment back in the city, through a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20. The whole place smelled like furniture polish and something floral I couldn't place. Expensive. Everything smelled expensive. Mr. Whitcomb travels frequently, Elena said without turning around. Mrs. Whitcomb prefers quiet. You'll oversee grounds, maintenance, security systems, vendor coordination. Staff answer to you. You answer to her. And Mr. Whitcomb. Elena paused at a set of French doors. Mr. Whitcomb answers to no one. She showed me the rest of the main floor. The study with its wall of leather-bound books. The sunroom that overlooked the dock. The wine cellar that could have paid off my student loans 3 times over. Then she took me outside, across a stone path, to a small cottage, maybe 200 yards from the main house. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a kitchenette. Simple but clean. This is yours, she said. Meals can be taken in the main kitchen or here. Your choice. Staff meetings at 7 every morning. Mrs. Whitcomb will meet with you at 10 to discuss expectations. She left me there, with a folder of paperwork and a set of keys that felt heavier than they should have. I unpacked what little I'd brought, hung my 2 good shirts in the closet, set my boots by the door, stood at the window and looked back at the main house, already feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life. That's when I noticed it. A light on in the upstairs window, the eastern corner, overlooking the lake. It was barely 5 in the morning, and someone was already awake. I watched that light for longer than I should have. Wondered who was up there, what they were thinking about, whether they'd noticed the fog the same way I had. Then I closed the curtain and told myself it wasn't my business. The study smelled like old paper and cold coffee when I walked in at 10 sharp. Morning light came through the tall windows, in slanted beams, catching dust motes that floated like they had nowhere to be. She was standing with her back to me, looking out at the lake. Mr. Mercer, her voice was cool, measured, like someone who'd learned a long time ago to choose every word carefully. Please, sit. I sat in one of the leather chairs across from the desk. Waited. She turned around, and I understood immediately why Elena had warned me about asking unnecessary questions. Mara Whitcomb was somewhere in her early 40s, dark hair that fell just past her shoulders, eyes the color of storm clouds, gray with flecks of something lighter. She was beautiful, but not in the way actresses are beautiful. Beautiful in the way a house is beautiful after it's weathered a few hard winters. Lines around her eyes, a tightness at the corners of her mouth, like she'd been holding something in for a very long time. She wore a simple cream blouse and dark slacks. No jewelry except a wedding ring that caught the light when she moved her hand. "I've reviewed your references," she said, settling into the chair behind the desk. "Impressive. The Harrison estate, the Caldwell property in Vermont." "Yes, ma'am, you left both positions voluntarily." "The Harrisons relocated overseas. The Caldwells sold after Mr. Caldwell passed." She nodded slowly. "And what brings you to a lake in the middle of nowhere, Mr. Mercer?" I thought about lying, making up something about wanting a quieter pace or appreciating the natural beauty of the region, but something in those gray eyes told me she'd see right through it. Honestly, I needed a fresh start. My last relationship ended badly, the city felt. Smaller afterward. A flicker of something crossed her face. Recognition? Maybe. Or understanding. It was gone before I could name it. "Fresh starts are underrated," she said quietly. Then, louder, "You'll find we run a tight operation here. Small staff, high expectations. Discretion is paramount. My husband and I value our privacy above almost everything else. Of course, Elena will handle household matters. You'll handle everything else. Grounds, security, contractors. If it happens outside these walls, it's your responsibility. If there's a problem, you bring it to me, not my husband. Is that clear?" "Yes, ma'am." She stood, and I realized the meeting was over. I stood too awkwardly, nearly knocking my knee against the desk. She extended her hand. Professional, polite. I took it. Her skin was warm, softer than I expected. She held on for maybe half a second longer than necessary, and in that half second, something shifted, like the air pressure in the room changed. Then she pulled her hand back, almost too quickly, and turned toward the window again. "Elena will show you the security protocols. Welcome to the estate, Mr. Mercer." I left the study with my heart beating faster than it should have been. Told myself it was just nerves. New job, new place. That's all. But I could still feel the warmth of her hand against my palm. And I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd felt it too. Thomas Bell's voice came through the phone like sandpaper. "The kind of lawyer who bills $400 an hour, and make sure you know it, the standard employment agreement is straightforward," he said. "Salary, benefits, housing, confidentiality, provisions. Nothing unusual for an estate of this size." I was sitting in Elena's office off the kitchen, a stack of papers spread out in front of me. She'd left me alone to review everything. Said she had linens to inventory. "And I asked. "Ah, the addendum?" Bell cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitcomb's prenuptial agreement contains certain provisions that extend to household staff. Clause 7B specifically." I flipped to the page he referenced. "Read it twice to make sure I understood. No romantic or sexual relationships with any member of household staff." I read aloud. "Violation results in immediate termination and forfeiture of all severance benefits." Correct. Mr. Whitcomb was quite specific when the prenup was drafted. Zero tolerance. The clause protects both parties from any complications. Complications! You understand? Wealthy households attract a certain element. Gold diggers. Opportunists. The clause ensures that anyone working for the Whitcombs has no incentive to pursue anything inappropriate. I stared at the page. The language was cold, clinical, like it was describing a business transaction, not human beings. "Any questions, Mr. Mercer?" "No. I think it's clear." "Excellent." Sign on the indicated pages and return the originals to Elena. "Welcome aboard." The line went dead. I signed the papers. All of them. Initialed where I was supposed to. Dated where I was supposed to date. Tried not to think about what kind of marriage required that clause in writing. Then I locked everything in the filing cabinet and went outside to walk the property clear of my head. Remind myself why I was here. Fresh start. That's what I'd told her. That's what I needed to remember. The dining room felt too big for one person. 20 chairs around a table meant for dinner parties that never happened. Crystal glasses that caught the candlelight. China so thin you could see through it. And Mara Whitcomb, sitting alone at one end, cutting her salmon into precise squares. I was supposed to be overseeing the evening service, making sure the temporary kitchen staff Elena had brought in were handling everything smoothly. But my eyes kept drifting back to her. She noticed. "You can sit, Mr. Mercer. I don't bite. I should really sit." I sat 3 chairs down from her because anything closer felt dangerous. She took a sip of wine, didn't look at me when she spoke. Richard was supposed to be back yesterday, then today, now tomorrow. Apparently, the meetings in Singapore keep extending. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I've gotten used to eating alone." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "The house is quieter when he's gone." Some people might find that sad. I find it restful. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. She looked at me then, really looked like she was trying to figure out what I was made of. "You're not like the others, are you, Mr. Mercer? The estate managers before you. 3 in the last 4 years. Elena scared off the first one. The second couldn't handle the isolation. The third, she trailed off, swirling the wine in her glass. Let's just say he didn't understand boundaries." "I understand boundaries, Mrs. Whitcomb." "Mara." The word slipped out, like she hadn't meant to say it. She covered quickly, setting down her glass. "When we're alone, when Richard's not here." "Mara is fine." "Mara," I repeated. It felt foreign in my mouth, intimate. She stood abruptly. "Thank you for keeping me company. Please tell Elena the salmon was excellent." She left before I could respond. Her heels clicked against the hardwood, fading down the hallway until the house went silent again. I sat there for a long moment, looking at the empty chair where she'd been, the half-finished glass of wine, the napkin folded neatly beside her plate. Then I heard it, faint, from somewhere down the hall, her voice sharp with frustration. "That clause was your idea, not mine. Don't pretend otherwise." I moved toward the door without thinking, stopped myself at the threshold. "Control everything, even when you're 10,000 miles away." Her voice cracked on the last word. Then silence. The click of a phone being set down. I backed away, retreated to the kitchen, told Elena the salmon was excellent. But I couldn't unhear what I'd heard. Couldn't stop wondering what kind of cage she was living in. The study was supposed to be locked at night. Elena had made that clear during orientation. Private documents, confidential files, off limits after 8, unless there's an emergency. But the door was open when I walked past at 11, just a crack, just enough to see light spilling into the hallway. I should have closed it and kept walking. Instead, I pushed it open. The desk lamp was on. Papers scattered across the surface like someone had been reading them in a hurry. I could see the Prenup folder open, the pages spread out, yellow highlighting on certain passages. I stepped closer, told myself I was just making sure nothing was out of order, just doing my job. Clause 7 billion was highlighted, but there were handwritten notes in the margin. Small, precise handwriting that I didn't recognize. Not my choice, never my choice. And below that, in different ink, like it had been written at another time. "How much longer can I live like this?" A sound made me freeze. Soft, coming from the room next door, the small sitting room that connected to the study through a side entrance. Crying. Someone was crying. I knew I should leave. This wasn't my business. These weren't my problems. I was staffed. I was supposed to be invisible. But the sound of it, quiet, muffled, like someone trying desperately not to be heard. It reached into my chest and squeezed. I backed out of the study as carefully as I'd entered, closed the door behind me, walked back to my cottage in the dark. But I didn't sleep that night. Kept hearing that sound, kept seeing those words in the margin. How much longer can I live like this? She found me the next morning at breakfast. I was in the kitchen before Elena arrived, pouring coffee I didn't really want, trying to shake the fog of a sleepless night. Mara walked in, wearing a robe over silk pajamas. No makeup, hair still tousled from sleep. She looked younger like that. "More real. You're up early," she said. Couldn't sleep. She nodded like she understood, poured herself a cup from the same pot. We stood there in silence, steam rising between us. "I need to tell you something," she said finally. "About the clause about 7B. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to." She wrapped her hands around the mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "Richard wrote that clause, not me. He insisted on it before we married. Said it was standard. Said all estates have something similar." "Do they?" "Some do. Not like that." She laughed. "But there was no humor in it. He was worried, I think, that I might find comfort elsewhere. During his long absences, I didn't know what to say, so I waited. I've never violated it. Never even come close. But I've spent 8 years feeling like a prisoner in my own home because of words on a piece of paper." Her voice shook slightly. "Words I didn't choose. I'm sorry. Don't be." She looked up at me then, and her eyes were re-dimmed but dry. Whatever tears she'd shed the night before were gone now. "I just wanted you to know, since you signed those papers too, I wanted you to know it wasn't me. It wasn't my cage." "Then whose cage is it?" She smiled sadly, set down her mug, touched my arm just briefly, just for a moment before stepping back. "Thank you for listening. Evan, you should know that's rare around here." She left me standing in the kitchen with cold coffee and a warmth on my arm where her fingers had been. And I realized, standing there in the pale morning light, that I was already in deeper than I should have been. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of work and weather. A cold front moved in off the lake, bringing wind and rain that made outdoor work impossible. I spent most of my time reviewing security protocols, meeting with contractors about the boathouse renovation, coordinating deliveries with vendors in town. But every moment I wasn't working, I was thinking about her. The renovation meeting was her idea. The east wing needed updating. She said, new windows, structural work on the foundation. She wanted to walk the property together, show me what she had in mind. We started at the boathouse and worked our way back toward the main house. The rain had stopped, but everything was still wet: the grass, the trees, the air itself. She walked slightly ahead of me, pointing out problem areas, drainage issues near the greenhouse, a cracked retaining wall by the garden. The kind of things you don't notice until someone shows you how to look. "This path used to lead to an orchard," she said, stopping near a row of old stumps. "Apple trees. Richard had them cut down the year after we married. Said they attracted too many bees." "That seems excessive." She smiled. "Everything with Richard is excessive. Control is a kind of currency for him. The more he has, the safer he feels." We walked in silence after that, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that fills in the spaces words can't reach. When we reached the main house, she spread the blueprints across a stone table on the patio. The wind caught the edges, threatening to send them flying. I reached out to hold them down at the same moment she did. Our hands brushed. Neither of us moved. I could feel her pulse through her fingertips. Or maybe it was mine. It was impossible to tell where one heartbeat ended and the other began. She pulled away first, smoothed the blueprints, pretended it hadn't happened. "I should let you get back to work," she said. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Mercer." We were back to Mr. Mercer now. "The wall's going up again." "Of course, Mrs. Whitcomb." She winced slightly at the formality. But she didn't correct me. "Elena found me in my cottage that evening, knocked twice, then let herself in before I could answer. She asked you to stay after the staff leaves tomorrow night," she said without preamble, "for a security consultation." That's right. Elena studied me for a long moment. Her face was impossible to read. "The Whitcombs are good employers," she said finally. "They pay well. They don't make unreasonable demands. But this house has rules, Mr. Mercer. Rules that exist for reasons you don't fully understand yet. I know about the clause. You know what's written on paper?" She stepped closer. "That's not the same as knowing. Not even close." She left without another word. I spent the rest of the night trying to decide whether to go to that meeting, whether I was being paranoid, whether Elena was warning me or testing me or something else entirely. In the end, I decided it didn't matter. I'd already made up my mind. The kitchen was dark, except for the light over the island. I'd sent the evening staff home at 9, like she'd asked, locked up the main entrances, Done everything by the book. She was waiting for me with 2 cups of coffee and a plate of shortbread cookies that looked homemade. "You came," she said. "You asked." She gestured to the stool across from her. I sat. "I wanted to talk about the security cameras," she said. "Richard wants them upgraded. He's been pressuring me about it for weeks. We talked about cameras for maybe 20 minutes. Motion sensors, night vision, coverage areas. It was all technical, all professional. But somewhere in the middle of it, the conversation shifted. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked suddenly. "Like you woke up one day and realized none of this was what you wanted, but you don't remember making the choice to be here?" "Yes," I said. "More than I'd like to admit." She laughed softly. "At least I'm not the only one." We talked for 2 more hours after that, about the lives we'd imagined for ourselves, the compromises we'd made, the people we'd been before circumstances shaped us into who we were now. She told me about meeting Richard, how charming he'd been, how different things looked before the wedding, before the prenup, before years of lonely dinners and empty rooms. I told her about Sarah, my ex, the woman I'd thought I'd marry until I found out she'd been seeing my best friend for 6 months behind my back. "Fresh start," Mara said, echoing my words from the interview. "I understand now." When I finally looked at the clock, it was almost midnight. The house was completely silent around us. "I should go," I said. "Yes." She stood too. "You should." Neither of us moved. "Evan." She started to say something else, then stopped, shook her head. "Good night! Good night, Mara." I walked back to my cottage in the cold night air, looked up at the main house one more time before I went inside. The light in her window was on, and I realized, with a certainty that settled into my bones, that I was already past the point of no return. The days that followed settled into a rhythm I hadn't expected. Morning meetings with Elena about household operations, afternoon walks around the property, checking on the contractors, evening meals in a kitchen, usually alone, usually thinking about things I shouldn't have been thinking about. But every day, somewhere in between, there was Mara. A brief conversation in the hallway, a shared glance across the dining room, the way she'd pause near my office door like she wanted to say something, then keep walking without a word. I started noticing things about her. Small things. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The slight limp in her left leg on cold mornings and old riding injury. Elena mentioned once. The sound of her laugh, rare as it was like church bells in an empty valley. Each morning I told myself to keep my distance. Each night I went to bed with her voice still echoing in my head. Tuesday bled into Wednesday. Wednesday into Thursday. By Friday, the renovation crew had finished the preliminary work on the east wing, and Mara asked me to walk through the progress with her. We moved through the stripped-down rooms, past exposed beams and plastic sheeting, talking about timelines and budgets. Professional. Safe. Then we reached the old sitting room at the end of the hall. The windows had been removed, and the afternoon light poured in unfiltered, catching dust, motes in the air. She stopped in the middle of the empty room, stood there looking out at the lake. "Richard and I used to have breakfast in here," she said quietly, "when we were first married, before the traveling started." Before? She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. "What happened?" She turned to face me. The light caught her eyes, turning them silver. "I woke up," she said. "That's all. One morning I just woke up, and I realized the man I'd married wasn't the man I was living with. And by then, the papers were signed. The cage was built. You could leave. Could I?" She smiled sadly. "The prenup isn't just about the clause. Evan, it's about everything. If I leave, I walk away with nothing. No money. No property. Not even the clothes in my closet. Technically, Richard's lawyers made sure of that. That's excessive. Controlling," she laughed, but there was no joy in it. "That's Richard. He doesn't want me. He just doesn't want anyone else to have me either." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Just stood there with her in that empty room, while the light shifted and the dust settled around us. After a long moment, she reached out, touched my arm, let her hand rest there for just a second longer than necessary. "Thank you for listening," she said. "You're good at that. Listening. I had practice. The families I worked for before, they talked a lot. I learned that sometimes people just need someone to hear them. And what about you, Evan? Who listens to you? I didn't have an answer for that. She didn't wait for one, just turned and walked back toward the main hall, leaving me alone with the dust and the dying light. The amendment came up on a walk by the lake. It was early evening, the sun hanging low over the water, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. I'd finished my rounds for the day and was heading back to my cottage when I saw her sitting on the old wooden dock, her shoes off, her feet dangling over the edge. I should have kept walking. Instead, I walked out to join her. Mind if I sit? She gestured to the space beside her. I sat, keeping a careful distance between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Just watched the sun sink lower, listened to the water lap against the pilings. I did something, she said finally, a few years ago. Something I've never used. I waited. The prenup. It's not a static document. There are provisions for amendments, changes both parties can make, under certain conditions. She pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. Richard used one of those provisions 3 years into our marriage, added a clause about my spending, said it was for my own protection. And you, I added my own amendment. 2 years later. 2. Clause 7B. She turned to look at me, and in the fading light, her eyes looked almost golden. The clause still exists, but I gave myself an exception, a way out, if I ever needed one. My chest tightened. An exception? It's never been used. I filed it and forgot about it. Told myself it was just a safety net, something to make me feel less trapped, even if I never actually... She trailed off. Does that make sense? Yes, I said. It makes sense. We sat there until the sun disappeared completely, until the stars came out one by one over the lake. Then she stood, brushed off her dress, and looked down at me with something I couldn't quite name in her expression. Good night, Evan. Good night, Mara. I watched her walk back to the house, watched the lights come on in the windows, one by one, and I sat there on that dock for a long time after, thinking about cages and exceptions and the dangerous space between what's allowed and what's wanted. The storm came out of nowhere. 1 minute we were inspecting the boathouse, checking the structural damage from last winter. The next, the sky opened up like someone had torn a hole in it. Rain hammered the tin roof. Wind rattled the old windows. Within seconds, the path back to the main house had turned into a river of mud. We should wait it out, Mara said, stepping back from the door. It'll pass in an hour. An hour. Alone with her in this small space, the walls seemed to shrink around us. There was an old bench against the far wall, covered in canvas tarps. I cleared it off, offered her a seat. She took it. I sat on the opposite end, as far away as the bench would allow. But even that felt too close. The silence between us was different now, charged, electorate, like the air before lightning strikes. Evan. She said my name like it cost her something. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me, okay? Do you think about me the way I think about you? The question hung in the air between us. I could have lied, could have protected both of us with a simple no. But I was tired of lying. To her, to myself. Yes, I said, more than I should. She closed her eyes, let out a breath she'd been holding. I know this is wrong, she whispered. I know the rules. I know what we both signed. But I can't stop thinking about what it would be like to, just once, feel something real. Mara. She moved closer. Not touching, but close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something floral and warm. I'm not asking for promises, she said. I'm not asking for forever. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I kissed her. It was soft, tentative, the kind of kiss that asks a question rather than answers one. She kissed me back. For one perfect moment, the storm outside faded. The rules faded. Everything faded except the warmth of her lips and the sound of her breath and the feeling of finally letting go. Then headlights swept across the boathouse window. We pulled apart like we'd been burned. Richard? She whispered. He wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow. The panic in her voice cut through everything. I was on my feet before I knew I'd moved, scanning the boathouse for somewhere to go. The back door, she said, through the storage room. It comes out near the tree line. I hesitated, didn't want to leave her alone. Go, she said. I'll be fine. I've been doing this for years. I went the rain, soaked me within seconds. I ran through the mud, through the trees, circled back toward my cottage, using a route that kept me hidden from the main drive. By the time I got inside, I was shaking. Not from the cold, from everything else. I stood at my window and watched the lights in the main house. Saw Richard's silhouette pass by one of the windows. Saw Mara's smaller form follow. And I stood there for hours, replaying that kiss in my mind, knowing everything had changed, and nothing could go back to the way it was before. The next morning, she was different, professional, distant. The warmth from the boathouse, completely gone, replaced by the same cool formality she'd shown me on my first day. I understood. I hated it, but I understood. Richard was home now. The rules were back in effect. Whatever had happened between us, whatever almost happened, had to be buried. Days passed. Then, a week. I saw her at staff meetings, across dining rooms, in hallways, always with Richard nearby or expected soon. Always with that careful distance between us. She didn't avoid me exactly, but she didn't seek me out either. No more late-night conversations in the kitchen. No more walks by the lake. I threw myself into work. Finished the boathouse repairs ahead of schedule. Upgraded the security system Reacher had been asking about. Kept busy enough that I didn't have time to think. But at night, alone in my cottage, the thinking came anyway. I started drafting resignation letters. 3 different versions. 1 professional, 1 personal, 1 somewhere in between. Never sent any of them. Because leaving felt like surrender. And staying felt like torture. And I couldn't figure out which one was worse. Lydia Crane arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Richard's sister. Blonde, sharp-featured, with a kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. She found me in the garden shed, inventorying tools. You're the new estate manager. It wasn't a question. Evan, isn't it? Yes, ma'am. Lydia, please. She picked up a trowel, examined it like she'd never seen one before, set it down again. I hear you've been doing excellent work. Richard mentioned the security upgrade specifically. Just doing my job. Of course. She moved closer, close enough that I had to step back or touch her. I've been watching. It's what I do. Watch. Something cold settled in my stomach. I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do. Her smile sharpened. Mara is fragile. She always has been. My brother's away so often, and she gets lonely. It's natural, but loneliness can lead to poor decisions for everyone involved. I met her eyes. Didn't blink. I appreciate the concern, but my relationship with Mrs. Whitcomb is entirely professional. I hope so, Evan. For your sake. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. The Whitcombs take care of their own, but they're also very good at removing problems. Quietly, permanently. She left me standing there with a trowel in my hand and ice in my veins. Elena found me an hour later. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with those knowing eyes and shook her head slowly. Be careful, she said. That's all I'm saying. Be careful. The document appeared on my desk 3 days later. No note, no explanation. Just a manila folder with a legal document inside, pages marked with yellow tabs. I recognized Thomas Bell's letterhead, recognized the formatting from the papers I'd signed when I was hired. But this was different. This was the amendment Mara had mentioned, the exception to Clause 7B. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. The language was dense, full of legal terms and conditional clauses. But the core of it was clear. Under certain circumstances, with proper documentation, the prohibition on staff relationships could be waived. The waiver required only 1 signature, Mara's. The signature line was blank. The document was unsigned. I didn't know what to do with it. What it meant that she'd left it for me, whether it was an invitation or a test or something else entirely. I locked it in my desk drawer, tried to forget about it. But some things can't be forgotten. Some doors Once cracked open, can't be fully closed. I spent nights in my cottage replaying every moment, every conversation, every glance that lasted half a second too long. I told myself I should leave, that this job wasn't worth the risk, that whatever I felt from Mara Whitcomb was a fantasy built on proximity and loneliness, and nothing more. But I didn't leave. I stayed, worked, waited, and then my phone buzzed one night. Not Mara's number. Thomas Bell's. Mr. Mercer, I apologize for the late hour. Mr. Bell, I wanted to inform you of a legal filing that was processed this evening. His voice was careful, measured. Mrs. Whitcomb has exercised her right to amend the prenuptial agreement. Specifically, Clause 7B. My heart stopped. The amendment has been documented and filed. The clause now includes an exception. A specific exception. What kind of exception? A long pause. The amendment reads, and I quote, "Exception granted to the individual designated as a state manager at the time of filing. All other provisions of Clause 7B remain in effect." I couldn't speak. Mr. Mercer, I want to be clear. This amendment protects you from the original clause's penalties, but it does not obligate anyone to anything. It simply opens a door that was previously closed. I understand. Do you? I hope so. Another pause. Be careful, Mr. Mercer. Legal documents can protect you from some things, but not everything. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark for a long time, thinking about doors and exceptions and the terrifying weight of being chosen. The next morning, I found myself in the study. The folder was there again, on the corner of the desk where I couldn't miss it. This time, the signature line wasn't blank. Mara's name, in her careful handwriting, dated the day before. And below her signature, 2 words in the margin. Accept him. I closed the folder, walked out of the study, found her in the sunroom, standing at the window the way she always did. I saw it, I said. She didn't turn around. I know. Why? Now she turned. Her eyes were re-dimmed, but dry. Her chin lifted in something like defiance. Because I'm tired, Evan. Tired of living by rules I didn't write. Tired of being alone in a house full of people. Tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel. She stepped closer. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm not expecting anything. I just needed you to know that if something ever happens between us, it's not forbidden anymore. Not for me and Richard. Richard doesn't know. The amendment is private. Between me and the lawyers. She smiled sadly. Another cage he built that I've found a way out of. I stood there, torn between everything I wanted and everything I knew was wise. I can't, I said finally. Not like this. Not as a secret exception. Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe. Or understanding. I know, she said. I knew you'd say that. That's why I chose you. That's why it had to be you. She left me standing there in the sunroom, watching the light shift on the water, knowing I'd just passed some kind of test I hadn't known I was taking. 2 weeks passed. Richard left again. Singapore, then London, then somewhere else I didn't bother to remember. I kept my distance. Did my jobby. Went to bed alone every night with the memory of that kiss burning in my chest. Then the text came. 2:07 a.m. 3 words. Porch lights on. I lay there in the dark, phone glowing in my hand, knowing what it meant, knowing I had a choice to make. I got up, pulled on a jacket, walked outside. The main house loomed against the night sky, and there, on the side porch, a single light glowed like a beacon. She was sitting on the porch swing when I got there, wrapped in a blanket, bare feet tucked underneath her. You came, she whispered. You asked. I sat down beside her. Not touching. Not yet. Just there. I'm not asking for forever, she said. I know you can't give me that. I'm not asking for promises or plans or any of the things married people are supposed to want. What are you asking for? She turned to look at me. In the dim light, her eyes were impossible to read. Tonight, she said. Just tonight. And then tomorrow we go back to being what we're supposed to be. A state manager and employer. Nothing more. Is that enough? I don't know. Her voice cracked slightly. But it's more than I have now. More than I've had in years. We sat there in silence as the night deepened around us, talking about nothing and everything, about the lives we've lived and the lives we'd imagined, about fear and loneliness, and the strange comfort of being understood. We didn't touch, not Wernies. But somehow, sitting there with her in the dark, I felt closer to another person than I had in years. Dawn started to creep over the horizon. The sky turned from black to gray to pale pink. I should go, I said. I know. I stood, looked down at her, memorized the way she looked, in that moment tired and beautiful and impossibly brave. Good night, Mara. Good night, Evan. I walked back to my cottage. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. Some conversations don't need words to finish them. The weeks after that were different. We went back to routine. Staff meetings and property inspections and meals eaten separately in different parts of the house. To anyone watching, nothing had changed. But something had changed. There was an understanding between us now. An acknowledgement. When our eyes met across a room, there was something there that hadn't been there before. Not a promise. Not a plan. Just recognition. Two people who had looked at each other honestly and decided that some connections don't need labels to be real. Richard came and went. Lydia visited twice more, watched me with those sharp eyes, eventually stopped bothering. Elena kept the house running like she always had, asked no questions, offered no warnings. Life went on. Some nights, the porch light came on. Sometimes I went, sometimes I didn't. When I did, we sat together in the dark and talked until dawn. Nothing more, nothing less. It was enough, most of the time. I'd wake up in my cottage at 3 a.m. and wonder what I was doing. Wonder if I should leave. Wonder if this strange half connection was better than nothing or worse than everything. I never found an answer. Maybe there wasn't one to find. Some stories don't have endings. Some doors are meant to stay cracked. I've been at the estate for almost a year now. The seasons have changed twice. The boathouse renovation is complete. The security system runs perfectly. The grounds have never looked better. And some nights, when I can't sleep, I walk outside and look up at the main house. Sometimes her light is on. Sometimes it isn't. But the porch light is always there. A small beacon in the darkness. A reminder of what exists between us undefined, unspoken, uncertain. I don't know what happens next. Don't know if Richard will ever find out. Don't know if Mara will ever ask for more than these quiet moments in the dark. But I know one thing. Some nights, when the world is quiet and the stars are bright and the weight of everything unsaid hangs heavy in the air, the porch light comes on. And some nights, I still walk toward it. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. And remember, some rules were made to be